What's going on, everybody? It's your pal Miles here, and welcome to another episode of ShoBooVie. For those of you who have never been here before, welcome. For those returning folks, welcome. Thanks for coming back. But a little overview for the newbies here. What we do at ShoBooVie is I take a show, a book, and a movie, like you can see in the logo up here. Shout out to my sister Deanna for making the logo and the website. If you haven't gone to the website, we have tons of reviews for shows, books, and movies, all sorts of past ShoBooVie episodes. There's a ton of content on there. Go check it out. But basically, I take one of each of those bits of media and I merge them together with a common theme. So, for example, if we take Like Water for Chocolate, new Max TV show, the book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and the movie Chocolat with Johnny Depp and Juliette Binoche, what all of those have in common is that the theme that chocolate is delicious on nearly sinful and sexual levels. So maybe that's an episode I'll do one day. Could get a little filthy, but I don't know. But your boy loves chocolate. Anyway, that's just an example of what we do here on ShoBooVie. Something else about ShoBooVie, which you might have noticed already, is we kind of do like a live stream kind of scenario here because I don't know how to edit and I don't want to learn because it seems really terrible and difficult. So this is just going to be a one take wonder from your boy here, and I'm just going to spew. I might spit on myself. I might not know what to say at one point, but it's fine. It'll be fun. It's like cinema verite. You get me at my realist. So, and what we're going to dive into this week is postmodernism, which is something that even if you're not, into, creative theory and things like that, it's something that we've all come across all sorts of media, maybe without us even realizing. I have some popular examples up here. But basically what postmodernism is it's sort of like a construction of storytelling that rails against traditional storytelling. So like, for example, the movie Memento over here, really popular movie, one of Christopher Nolan's early movies. It's told backwards. Obviously, that's a pretty strange way to tell a story. The TV show Community, super popular TV show, created by Dan Harmon, who also made Rick and Morty over there, specialized in being super meta, so being like actively aware that it's a TV show while being a TV show, but like still existing as a TV show. One of these sort of like mind fuck things. Then you have a movie like Scream, which is also like super meta, bucks the horror tropes as it carries them out. Um, and then even a show like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is postmodern because it takes like your typical like cutesy little sitcom and just guts it and makes it gnarly. So that's kind of where we're going to jump into this week because honestly, this is a bit of a hedonistic impulse by myself because this is like my favorite genre because you just get the weirdest, most experimental, but like inventive and creative media when you encounter postmodernism. So we're going to jump into how postmodernism takes storytelling and just flips it on its head. And what we're going to look into in terms of our show, book, and movie is for our show, we're going to look at Twin Peaks: The Return. For our book, we're going to look at the legendary modern classic Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. And for our movie, a pretty popular horror movie, which a lot of you have probably seen, called The Cabin in the Woods. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with Twin Peaks: The Return. I keep shooting all over the place here. Whee! Anyway, so Twin Peaks: The Return, made by master filmmaker David Lynch, R.I.P., just passed away. I think it was like last year. Master of the surreal, made some very, very odd films. He made a little bit more traditional stuff, like The Elephant Man, but he also made some very, very strange movies like Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, and Blue Velvet, classic movies that almost exist in this sort of like dream logic. And with Twin Peaks, he teamed up with a guy named Mark Frost, who made a police procedural back in the day called Hill Street Blues. And so basically, these guys merged Mark's expertise in cop procedurals and David Lynch's expertise in surrealism, and they made Twin Peaks. But Twin Peaks: The Return is actually a sequel season. It's one season of TV that aired in 2017, almost 10 years ago, and it was a sequel to the OG Twin Peaks, which came out in 1992 and aired for 2 seasons and just blew up television back in the day because it was postmodern, kind of before postmodern was even a thing that existed on TV. Basically, it was about this sleepy little Northwest town called Twin Peaks and about a murder that takes place there of the homecoming queen, Laura Palmer. and the mystery surrounding her death. And David Lynch, like in a lot of his work, he takes the idea of like the sleepy little suburban modern American town and reveals like all the gunk and nastiness that he thought was underneath it. And he reveals it in a really, really bizarre and funky and surreal ways. There's like an alternate dimension that's featured really prominently in it. It's you have no idea where you're going to get with Twin Peaks, honestly. It ended up being too ambitious for its time. It ended up getting canceled. They didn't want to honor Lynch's vision of working on it, having it last several seasons and really stretching out the mystery of Laura Palmer's death, so they ended up getting it canceled. But that leads us to The Return, because it's actually so crazy. In the original Twin Peaks, there are characters, like ghostly phantom characters, that say, "I'll see you in 25 years. And then in 2017, literally 25 years later, they make the third season of the show, Twin Peaks The Return. And that's what I'm going to get into today in regards to postmodernism, because Twin Peaks The Return is one of the strangest single seasons of TV you'll ever see in your life. First off, it exists as 18 episodes, but it's commonly actually seen as an 18-hour movie because there is no discernible beginning and end to each episode. It's one huge rolling story, and the episodes just end at the hour mark regardless of what's happening. And there's also like strange tangents that occur in the middle of the story. There's like giant like musical sequences where you're just watching a concert, and like I mentioned already, it bucks a ton of narrative trends. Obviously the ones I just mentioned, you're supposed to, if you're making an episodic television show, it's supposed to have a discernible ending at the end of every episode. Twin Peaks said, nah, we're not going to do that. But it's also the actual content is very postmodern because it's just unlike any sort of TV show you've ever seen. And I have a few clips here for you. This is like one of the first scenes where we see our original hero, Dale Cooper, played by Kyle MacLachlan, 25 years later in the new show. This is how he's introduced. This qualifies as exposition in the Twin Peaks universe.
Where am I?
That's it. Like, welcome back to Twin Peaks. This is where our guy comes back from like a gold marble and like he's just brought back to life without any explanation. That's postmodernism for you. Have another example over here where this is supposed to be a character who the actor actually died at one point, and so they had to bring him back in a different form, and they chose his form to be a face on a tree. I'm serious. And the character's name is, or actually, no, forgive me. There's a one-armed character on the show. This thing you see here, the face in the tree, is his arm. And that's like a character in the show. It like offers some wisdom. Check this out. That's some exposition for you. Crazy stuff. So this is the kind of stunts that Twin Peaks pulled. There's still a story in here. There's enough of a story to make this still really intriguing, but you are along for a really untraditional postmodern ride if you tune into any season of Twin Peaks, let alone The Return. But some people actually think The Return is the greatest movie of the 21st century so far. Bonkers stuff. Give it a shot. It's super weird. You may hate it, but it is postmodernism at its best in television. And then we move on to books. Infinite Jest, which, as you can see here, is like one of the fattest books you'll ever read. I read it a few years ago. It took me a long time, it's like 1,200 pages. But written by David Foster Wallace, sort of like a one-hit wonder. He only was able to write a few books. This is by far his most popular, seen as one of the greatest books of all time, one of the greatest books of the last 100 years. Actually, in Time Magazine's list of the top 100 books of the last 100 years, this is in it. And as you can see, a ton of annotations here. That's not like strange for a book like Infinite Jest, which if we go over here, These are like actual things that I found online that help guide readers through Infinite Jest. So again, we are bucking simple storytelling, simple narrative, like a character arc, the hero's journey and all that, exposition, rising action, climax, all that like doesn't exist in Infinite Jest. It is doing its own thing. It's the story of people at a tennis academy. It's a story of drug addicts. It's a story of Canadian wheelchair assassins. It's the story of a movie that exists that apparently is so entertaining it like sends you into a coma and like melts your brain. It's all those stories and like 87 other stories. This is actually a plot diagram over here. And like this helps people read Infinite Jest. You can really dive into it like this, or you can just sit back and let it wash over you. That's what I did. But the bottom line is that David Foster Wallace is doing some serious postmodern shit here because he is bouncing all over the place. This is not your traditional novel. What you see up here is literally hundreds of footnotes that he has. There's like 200 pages of footnotes in the back of the book that are essentially their own story. It's nuts. What I'm blocking here is a character diagram. There's like hundreds of characters in Infinite Jest. And up here in the right-hand corner, these are all links to help you read Infinite Jest. There's an index, character profiles, utility pages, its own Wikipedia. It is nuts, guys. But it's still so entertaining. And by doing this, it has that sort of metafictional aspect to it that I talked about earlier. That's a huge aspect of postmodernism too, in that David Foster Wallace is very aware that he's bucking the trends of of novels and telling a story in a novel. And instead of just like mailing it in, like he deemed a lot of authors were doing, he says, no, I'm going to make this a very interactive experience. And if you're going to read my book and you're going to understand my book, it's going to have to be a bit of a lift for you. And so that's why he intentionally made it as complex as he did, with all of these stories and footnotes and super interweaved and nonlinear storytelling, because he was actually observing the fact that maybe we are too lackadaisical in how we want entertainment as a society. And we want something that's just going to melt our brains and let us sit there. But he said, no, I'm going to make you work for it. So that's the metafictional aspect of the postmodernism in Infinite Jest. And speaking of metafiction, that takes us to our last bit here, our movie bit, The Cabin in the Woods, which is probably the most popular pick of the three things that I have here in this list. But Cabin in the Woods came out like 15 years ago, which is crazy to think that it's already that old. Written and directed by Drew Goddard, who actually has Project Hail Mary coming out this weekend. Wrote The Martian, wrote a few episodes of Lost. He's the man. Also co-wrote this with Joss Whedon, who's super famous for making Buffy and Firefly and all that stuff. But basically, Cabin in the Woods takes your classic horror movie trope of a bunch of teens hanging out in a cabin in the woods and becomes, and like just ratchets up the meta aspect and self-awareness of that story. And it literally shouts it out. Like, you have these two guys over here, Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins, who are like they're like lab assistants that are essentially running the cabin. And they're making sure that the cabin checks all the boxes of horror movies and horror tropes, because there are unseen ancient viewers that want to watch these things occur the way they occur in these genre beats. So they're basically telling us that, like, in the movie, it's sort of treated as like a sacrificial aspect. It's like we have to check all of these like genre boxes, or these like ancient gods are going to be angry. But really, it's commenting on what we as viewers want in a horror movie. Like, for example, we have these five characters, and when we first meet these characters, they're like actually fairly unique, but they're actually drugged and influenced by Bradley Cooper and the Lab Gang to fit into genre tropes. Like, Chris Hemsworth is like a really intelligent dude, but they end up drugging him and turning him into this like big jock, lunk that you see in horror movies all the time. The blonde woman here is like you're just totally standard kind of, she's just like a normal girl, and they turn her into this like super like hedonistic, kind of like sexually whatever kind of woman. And like they have her, like a big aspect of the movie at one point is like her getting naked and how much the gods enjoy that, directly calling out the viewers, being like, you like this, you bunch of perverts, when you watch a horror movie. So it hits on all those different tropes. And I mean, it's really, Cabin in the Woods is super, super detailed. It's really cool. Like, there's mist in the woods around the cabin. and they say that like, oh, we're pumping in the mist because it's full of these fumes that like have these guys turn into all these tropes and stuff. They pump in gas so that a character makes the really classic stupid horror movie decision that they should all split up. So like things like that. It's very, very aware of itself. And I want to show you an example. There's a bit in the beginning of the movie where the teenagers on the way to the cabin encounter this man. They call him the Harbinger, and he tells them, like we see in a bazillion different horror movies, "Oh, turn back! You know, there's horrible things in the woods. Like, don't go up there." And of course, the kids ignore him. So, but the cabin in the woods doesn't want to leave this alone. They make it abundantly clear that they're poking at a common facet of horror movies.
The hair dye
Dumb blonde, very artistic.
works its way into the blood through the scalp, very gradual. Kim Department keeps their end up.
I'll see it when I believe it.
Control?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have the Harbinger on line 2.
Oh, Christ. Can you take a message?
I don't think so. He's really pushy. To be honest, he's kind of freaking me out.
Okay, put him on. Mordecai, baby, what's happening? How's the weather up top?
The lambs have passed through the gate. They are come to the killing floor.
Well, you're doing a great job out there. By the numbers, man. You got to start it off just right. So we'll talk to you later, okay?
Their blind eyes see nothing of the horrors to come. Their ears are stopped.
They are the gods' fools.
Well, that's how it works.
Cleanse them. Cleanse the world of their ignorance and sin. Bathe them in the crimson of... Am I on speakerphone?
No, absolutely not. Speakerphone, no, I wouldn't do that.
Yes, I am. I can hear the echo.
Oh, my God. You're right. Hang on one second. I'll take you off.
That's rude. I don't know who's in the room.
Fine. There. You're off.
Thank you. Don't take this lightly, boy. It wasn't all by your numbers. The fool nearly derailed the invocation with his insolence. The Ancient Ones see everything, and they will not be... I'm still on speakerphone, aren't I?
Oh, my God, Mordecai! I can't believe it. It did it again. Morty? What happened next?
So you can see there, Cabin in the Woods actively utilizes the trope and then mocks it, and then factors that trope into the plot of the movie. So it has this like wild meta layering, which it just screams postmodernism, because it's the story that's aware that it's telling a certain type of story, and then it's making a commentary on that story while telling that story. It's pretty dense stuff. But like I said, we've all seen stuff like this, so I hope this gave you guys a little bit more context on what you typically, when you see something pretty strange that doesn't seem to fit the bill, it's postmodernism. And now I hope that you've learned a little bit about it. And like I said, I hope you dig it, because stuff like this is fun, and it's just not like everything you're going to see all the time. So it's, like I said, it's my favorite genre. And if you're bored, whatever, at least I got to talk about it a little bit. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys as always. If you haven't already, check us out on Facebook, follow on Instagram, go to the website, like I said, leave through some reviews and stuff. But thanks a ton for watching, guys. I hope you guys dug it. Let me know if you have any ideas for any future episodes. I'm thinking like maybe a family saga thing. I was thinking maybe like a war episode or something, but that seemed a little too close to home right now. But anyway, let me know what you think. But appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time.